I was off work that day and was in my apartment when ping pong rang on the front intercom. I checked the intercom, thinking I wasn't expecting a visitor, so who could it be? Then there was a girl of elementary school age standing there. A child I don't recognize. I had no idea who this elementary school student was, as she was not a relative of mine and none of my neighbors had elementary school children. I asked over the intercom, "Who are you? Is this Mr. Sebastian's house?" She asked for my last name. I answered fearfully, though suspiciously. "Yes, but I am Sebastian's daughter." I couldn't believe what I've just heard. Out of the mouth of the unknown girl came the name of my husband, whom I had not seen for 11 years. "My name is Victoria. I am a 27-year-old office worker. My husband's name is Sebastian. Sebastian is 28 years old, 1 year older than me. My husband and I had an office romance. My husband and I were in different departments, but we met each other for the first time when we had the opportunity to work together on a project. While we met several times at work, we got excited talking about our mutual hobby of going to cafes and hit it off. There were not many people in the office who were close in age, so we had a lot in common, and we quickly became friends. Even after the project we worked on together was over, we kept in touch and went out to dinner together several times. And then, Sebastian confessed his feelings and we started dating. I remember well how Sebastian, who is usually shy, looked me in the eye and told me how he felt. After about a year of dating, we got married. Another year later, she became pregnant with a daughter. My husband loved children and was very happy when I told him I was pregnant. He was so enthusiastic that he bought toys and clothes for our child even before they were born. He was so excited that his parents and co-workers told him that you should prepare for things like that from after birth. I was also anxious about my health and the money I would have to spend in the future, but I enjoyed just looking at the baby items my husband bought. However, around the 3rd month of pregnancy, my husband's behavior somehow changed. "Hey, where's the bank book for the account we've been saving to spend on our child?" "It's in the closet, though." "What's wrong with it?" "No, it's nothing." My husband started frequently checking the balance in the bank account we were saving for our child. Every time I asked him why, he brushed me off, and I was somewhat stuck. At that time, my husband was busy with a new project at work and was working overtime and on holidays. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, but I was still worried about being home alone. I suggested to my husband that I return home to give birth. "Hey, haven't you been leaving home a lot lately for work? I'm worried if something happens to me, so can I give birth at a hospital near my parents' house?" "You mean a home birth?" "Yes. It's my first time and I'm a little nervous. That way, if I have any trouble, I can ask my parents for help, and you won't be worried too, right?" "If that's what you want to do, I don't mind." Thus I was allowed by my husband to give birth at my parents' home. My husband looked a little sad, but he saw me off, saying, "Stay healthy and have a healthy baby." Since I was allowed to return home a little early, I was able to relax a lot at my parents' house. I contacted my husband daily, but probably because he was busy with work, he often did not reply. Still, my husband regularly visited my parents' house on weekends, so I didn't mind that he didn't reply often. I wanted my husband to be present during the birth, but he refused, saying, "I don't like to see blood and I might pass out just being there." I wanted to share the moment when our child was born into this world, but I was a little sad when I was refused. Finally, the contractions started. I immediately called the hospital and had my parents drive me to the hospital. As soon as they arrive at the hospital, they are transported to the delivery room. To be honest, I didn't remember much from there. A few hours later, I gave birth to my daughter safely. My husband and I were both very moved by the long-awaited meeting of our child. My husband said he would not decide on a name for our daughter until he saw her face, but apparently he had been secretly thinking about it, and at my husband's request, her name was decided to be Abigail. She spent some time in the hospital after giving birth. I was a little confused about breastfeeding and using diapers for the first time, but I worked on it with the nurse's careful instructions. My body was more battered than I expected after giving birth, and I had a lot of anxiety about raising a child for the first time. I wondered if I would be able to do well on my own once I was discharged from the hospital. Then a week passed and it was discharge day. My husband came to pick me up at the hospital, and we went straight to my parents' house. My parents were very happy to see their first grandchild. After leaving the hospital, I decided to stay at my parents' house for a while. I had a lot of worries, so I decided to raise my child at home with my parents' help. My husband also pioneered the idea, so my daughter and I stayed with my parents and my husband went back to our apartment. After my husband returned home, I struggled every day with the unfamiliar task of taking care of a child, no matter how much help I had from my parents at home. It was quite hard on my body, which was still recovering from the damage of childbirth. But when I saw my daughter's face, all that exhaustion was gone, and I knew I had to raise her properly. While I was at my parents' house, my husband visited me regularly. He willingly took care of our daughter while he was at home. It was a struggle just to change a diaper with his clumsy hands. Then one day, about 3 months after the birth, an incident occurred. My husband came to my parents' house that day, and I was spending time with my daughter. He asked me, "Do you want to go shopping or something? If so, I'll take care of Abigail, so go out with your mother." Really? We just ran out of diapers and milk, so that would be great. Can I ask you to do it for me? Sure. Then I went shopping with my mother. We returned home after about 3 hours of shopping. I'm home. No answer. Maybe they are taking a nap. So I tiptoed to the living room. I quietly opened the door, but my husband and daughter were nowhere to be seen in the living room. I wondered why, so I went to the bedroom, but there was no sign of them. I started to feel a strange unease in my heart. Maybe they went for a walk. I checked my husband's shoes and found no shoes. I thought, they must be taking their daughter for a walk, and put away the things I had shopped for anyway. However, neither my husband nor my daughter came home after 30 minutes or an hour. I thought this was something out of the ordinary and called my husband's phone, but it was disconnected. Did they go home? I rushed to the apartment where we lived. When I arrived at the apartment, I opened the front door with a bang and went inside, but they weren't there either. Why? What's going on? I stood there stunned in the room, gasping for breath on my shoulders. I looked around the room and found that only my husband's belongings were missing. I wondered if he had packed his belongings in advance. I then went looking for them in every place I could think of, but they were nowhere to be found. After consulting with my parents, I finally decided to file a missing persons report with the police. Various anxieties attacked me, wondering if they had been involved in some kind of incident and if my daughter was safe. However, even with a police search, they could not be found. I went from the height of happiness to the bottom all at once. I couldn't stop thinking about them every day and kept searching for them. The police search did not find them. I had so many questions about what had happened to them, what they were doing now, and why they had suddenly disappeared. I couldn't sleep at night thinking about the possibility that they might be seeking help or in pain. The toys and clothes my husband and I had bought for our daughter were never used, and the time just went on and on. 11 years passed without any progress. I was 38 years old and had returned to work at that time. I still live alone in the apartment where my family used to live. I always kept my room clean so that I would be ready when they came home. I was off work that day and was in my room at the apartment when the intercom rang with a ping-pong sound. I checked the intercom, thinking, I didn't plan to have any visitors, so who could it be? I checked the intercom and found a girl of elementary school age standing there. I didn't recognize her. She was not a relative's child, and there was no one in the neighborhood with an elementary school-aged child, so I had no idea who she was. I asked over the intercom, "Who are you?" Then she said, "Is this Sebastian's house?" She said my husband's name. I answered fearfully, although I thought it was suspicious. "Yes, that's right, but..." "Mom, you know, I'm Sebastian's daughter." I couldn't believe what I've just heard. What came out of the girl's mouth was the name of my husband, whom I had not seen for 11 years. I could not understand what was going on, but the girl in front of me insisted that she was our daughter. My daughter must have gone missing with her husband 11 years ago. My daughter, whom I separated from when she was only 3 months old, would not even remember my face, so how could she have come to our apartment? My heart was racing and I felt the same way. I wanted to ask her many questions, but I couldn't talk to her over the intercom, so I went to the front door and opened it. On the other side of the door stood a girl a little shorter than me. When I actually looked at her face, I felt she looked somewhat like me. I wasn't sure if she was my daughter yet, so I didn't feel comfortable giving her a ride home, so I moved to a nearby cafe. The cafe near our apartment was a little small, but it had a retro atmosphere. When we first moved here, my husband loved this cafe and we often visited there together. We hadn't been here since he disappeared, so I suddenly remembered those old days. We sat down facing each other at a table by the window. "What is your name?" "Abigail." "The name is the same as my daughter's." I looked at her face again and saw that she looked exactly like I had when I was a little girl. I began to wonder if she really was my daughter. "Where did you come from today?" "I came from my grandma and grandpa's house." "Where is your house?" "Farther away." "I live with my mother and father." "Mother?" I asked back. "She must be my daughter. That means I am her mother. And yet this girl says she lives with her mother. Is there a nurturing mother?" My head began to spin again. I asked her, "You have a father and another woman at home, don't you? Is that person your mother?" Then the girl slowly opened her mouth and explained. "I had a mother at home who did terrible things to me. She hit me on the head and kicked me. I hated it so much. So I went to my grandma and grandpa's house, which my father had told me about. Then my grandma and grandpa told me about my real mother. To my surprise, she told me that she had a foster mother. She had evacuated to my parents' house, told my parents I existed, and borrowed transportation money to come and see me. She then rolled up the sleeves of her clothes and put her arms out. Her arms were covered with fresh bruises. Seemingly, she was telling the truth. "You're my real mother, aren't you? I don't want to go back to my mother's house. Help me." She was speaking in a tearful voice as if she was trying to squeeze out of me. My chest tightened and I was about to cry. My mind was still in a state of confusion after my daughter suddenly told me so many things, but beyond my surprise, I gradually became angry with my husband and the woman. I was still in a state of confusion, but beyond my surprise, I was becoming more and more angry at my husband and the woman who had mistreated my daughter. I will never forgive them for what they did to my precious daughter. I still have a lot of things I need to make sure of, but I am your mother. You've worked so hard, you've done so well. Yes, I prefer a kind mother. I know. Then I decided and asked her. "Hey, you don't want to go back, do you? Let's start living with me, your real mother, okay?" My daughter nodded silently. "Well, then, can you show me to your house? I have something to tell your father and mother." Then my daughter and I went to my husband and the woman's place. It was a 2-hour drive from my apartment. Even though they were only this far apart, I thought they had been living in hiding for 11 years. There is a car. I think they are at home. I'll go first. My daughter got out of the car and headed for the front door of the house. I hid where I could see the front door from a distance and listened. My daughter did not have a key to the house, so she rang the intercom on the front door. Then a man came out of the front door. He looked a little thinner and had more wrinkles on his face, but he was unmistakably my husband. Seeing my husband for the first time in 11 years gave me chills. He was talking to my daughter. Then a woman came out from behind him. She looked like my daughter's foster mother. But when I saw her face, I was so surprised that I almost fell off my back. Could it be Tara? It turns out that her daughter's mother was my former best friend Tara. We hadn't been in touch in over 10 years, and I felt a little blown away, but I was undeniably convinced that she was Tara. Tara was a classmate of mine and we used to hang out a lot until more than 10 years ago. We had seen each other several times after we got married, so my husband must have known about her as well. However, when I became pregnant, Tara's work became very busy and she stopped contacting me most of the time, and we never saw each other again. The more I thought about it, the more confused I became. My husband had disappeared, and the woman he was living with was someone I knew. Why does he live with Tara? I couldn't figure out why Tara was abusing my daughter. I stood there, stunned, watching the situation. Then Tara said something to my daughter. She smacked on my daughter's head. At that moment I came back to myself. I took a deep breath and headed for the front door. My heart was beating. Wait! What are you doing to my daughter? Victoria! Why are you here? Well, it's been a long time. How did you find this place? Abigail told me. By the way, why are you here? Why? I'm the one who raised her. I am her mother. How can you say such a thing so openly? I gave birth to her with an aching belly. No matter what, she is my child. I yelled out in anger. My husband let us go inside the house so that we didn't want to bother the neighbors anymore. We sat down in the living room and started talking again. Sebastian, you're going to explain everything, aren't you? I'm sorry for what I did to you. It's not a matter of apologizing. My husband was a little deflated after I yelled at him, but he slowly began to talk. He had an affair with Tara after I got pregnant. Tara had contacted my husband and they had met together. My husband said he was lonely because he couldn't have me around when I was anxious about my first pregnancy. And it seems that they met several times when I was not around and had relations. He told me that the reason he was working overtime and on weekends was so that he could see Tara. I understand now that you were having an affair. But how could you leave with our newborn daughter? Can't you at least contact me? Well, Tara had erased my contact information and forbidden me to see you or visit your parents' house. Then Tara opened her mouth. This is my revenge against you. What do you mean? I've been with you for a long time, but the truth is that I hated you. My friends always loved you. You had a boyfriend before me, you got married, and then you have a baby. Every time I see your happy face, I got tired of it. That's why I decided to take everything away from you. Tara began to speak with a mocking expression on her face. Your husband was mine right away. I told him to bring the child and he did. I thought we were going to live together as the three of us, but the child started to look more and more like you, you know. I couldn't help but hate her. But that doesn't mean it's okay to put your hands on a child. I will never forgive you for ruining my happiness. I looked at my daughter and said, Abigail, I know you've been through a lot, and I want you to stay with me from now on if you would like. Then, she nodded slowly. Sebastian. I'm divorcing you. Of course, I will charge you alimony. It's no use running away from me. I will chase you to the ends of the earth. I stood up vigorously, took my daughter's hand, and ran out of the house. I had no idea that the people I had once trusted with my heart were such crazy people. I felt somewhat frustrated, but I also felt as if the blurring I had felt for the past 11 years had cleared up a little. I took my daughter home and told my parents what had happened. My parents were surprised, but I was relieved to hear that they were on my side. I enjoyed spending time with my grandchildren, whom I had not seen in 11 years. Later, through my lawyer, the divorce was officially finalized. Of course, I also claimed alimony and gained custody of my daughter. Tara seems to have a personality that easily becomes jealous of others, and she often causes trouble at her workplace as well. If the boss complimented a colleague, she acted mean to the colleague, and she caused trouble around her. As a result, she was annoyed by her boss and coworkers. Because of the trouble at the company, she eventually resigned from the company. My ex-husband and Tara continued to date, but their relationship deteriorated after Tara quit her job, and they eventually broke up. My ex-husband came to my apartment and said something ridiculous like, "Tara and I broke up, so let's start over." I said, "I don't want to see your face anymore." "Of course, you will never see my daughter again. The next time you show your face in front of us, I'll call the police," and he just left. I felt sorry for my daughter who had such a miserable father. My daughter moved into my place during the summer vacation. I used to live here with my ex-husband together, so it was more than spacious for Abigail and I. I got rid of everything from my husband's room and used it as my daughter's room. My daughter seemed happy to have her own room, which she had longed for. The cafe that used to be my favorite place is now our favorite place. This cafe is a place where I can remember the memories of time with you, Mom. I cried a little when she said something like that. She had grown up so much in 11 years. She says, "It seems like it's hard for you to do everything by yourself," and she willingly helps me with the housework and even cooks simple meals. She also said, "We had been apart for so long. I want to spend as much time as possible with you like this. I have been suffering for 11 years, and I have had a hard time. My daughter must have had a hard time too." In order to overwrite the painful memories, we are going to fill in the blank time of 11 years. I want to spend happy times together from now on.